that's the way it was. People became good friends. People would help each other out, but yet they weren't seeing each other every day, kind of a thing. You saw each other once in a while, and you also had something in common, because since you were all farmers, you could commiserate with the other person. You had something to talk about. You knew what that person's problems were. You know, my father would tell me about the Armenian family lived across from here. The Ethiopians were across from us, and he'd be out there at 4:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, sitting on a bushel basket, trying to cut spinach, waiting for the sun to come up, so that we would get enough light to cut the spinach. But there were some bad things that happened, and people would pull together. That particular farmer and my father both got electrocuted really badly from the high tension wires that run through Rehoboth. It's run through that part of South Rehoboth. You have irrigation pipes for the farm. They were cut in 20-foot lengths. And the high tension wires sag from tower to tower like this, but unfortunately the hills sometimes go like this. So you're trying to be aware of these things, but you become farmers underneath. The power companies like the farmers to be farming the land because that made it easier for them to keep the area clean underneath the towers. So they fostered it. And both that ran across the street, that Almanac Gropian and my father, and it worked for my father. I got zapped really, when the person lost his leg from here down. And the farmer across the street got sugar really bad and died from that, complications of that, because of the juice from those high tension wires. So, I mean, it's just little things but people would pull together at times. The Kinney Barn burned down. I knew I was only a little kid. This was up in North Rehoboth, I think. I didn't even, like I say, I didn't know where North Rehoboth was. I knew my father was taking me somewhere because a farm was burning down, and people tried to, as we have a volunteer fire department today, still back then it was volunteers. It was volunteers. Everyone got up and tried to put out the fire. And when these farms go up, there's hay. I mean, this hay goes, it's a matchstick. It goes up very, very fast, trying to get the animals out. Hass's farm, Joe Hass's farm on Providence Street, burned one year, the pig farm. And the stench was all over South Rehoboth. You could smell the smell of the burnt animals, because they didn't make it. That was a big deal back then when the Hass's farm burned. But that's the kind of community it was. People would just, when something like that happened, again, you had this connection with all these other people, because there were so many people who were involved in farming. Not everybody. Not everybody was involved in farming. A lot of people were involved, that's what I'm trying to say, coincidentally with farming, or tangentially with farming, because they sold supplies, or they did some kind of service or something for the farmer. You know what I'm saying? But there was, there were other professions too. But there was just a lot of farming. It's almost all gone now. The houses. I told you about my uncle's supermarket that was there in that corner of Reed Street, what's now Reed Street, and Water Street. That's 5 houses there. I farmed that land. I farmed the land across from that. That was Armin Hagopian's land. I farmed that. The other side of that corner, there was a huge farm that Phil Phillips, on what used to be the old part of Water Street. They changed that to Wheeler Street because of the EMTs changed the name of the street. It used to be, Water Street used to make a hook and go out to Providence Street. And that's now Wheeler Street. But anyway, that farm, the barn is still there from the cow farm that was there. That was a big cow farm. The Roses had a huge, there was, and the Almeida still had the farm on Barney Avenue. The Noons' farm on Mason Street. It was all farms. And we have 9 golf courses in Rehoboth. Those 9 golf courses used to be farms. You have to try to picture how many farms there were, how much land there was in farming at the time. Don't forget, Rehoboth geographically has been broken up over the years. It used to be a much bigger town. And as the encroachment came in from the cities and suburbia developed, all these other towns broke off from Rehoboth. And we were in between, Attleboro, Taunton, Providence, East Providence, and so we insulated from it from a long time. Unfortunately, maybe 20, 30 years ago, we did a better job of trying to save the land. We might have been able to do it. It's a little tougher now. I've served on the Agricultural Commission, and they've done a lot of things now to try to save what's left.
Describe the seasonal aspects of farming.
Well, on this kind of a farm, the kind of farm that I have, it's a vegetable farm. You know, don't forget there were cow farms, there were pig farms, there were all these different kinds of farms, horse farms. You know, there were different kinds of farms in Rehoboth. But vegetable farms, most of the time, people, you know, you plant your stuff in greenhouses, which my grandfather, by the way, incidentally, had a pit greenhouse on Brook Street. This is a very old style greenhouse. It's a 40-foot long greenhouse, and it ran by wood, and you had big logs, and you had to jump into a pit. There was a cemented area, or it would have been a stone area or cemented area. Then there was a wide pit, maybe 10 by 10 pit, and on one end of the pit there was the oven, or the oven where you put the wood, and the doors on them were typically a foot and a half, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, and latched. They usually cast iron, and you had to go get the lumber, which was larger logs than you put in normal stoves today. They were like 30-inch logs, big heavy wood, and you put them into this. You had to have a large firebox because that wood had to last the whole night, and you had to have it low like that. It had to be a pit because it was all the way the heat got into the greenhouse itself. They were glass greenhouses, usually cypress wood, and they were glass greenhouses, not the plastic like you see often today, plastic greenhouses. They were all glass. And the oven had to be down low because at the far end of the greenhouse, the 40 feet long, there was a chimney. And from the flue ran from the firebox along just above the ground to the chimney, and then the smoke would go up, so that the draft that was caused by that chimney would allow the flue gases from the wood to travel along the slate flue that they had that ran to hold us, and that's what kept that greenhouse warm. And my job, when I was in high school, would be to go down to my grandfather's and jump in and stoke that greenhouse for the last time, put the last stoking of wood in. And you have to pack that thing up pretty good. It was a lot of cubic feet. I wouldn't know exactly how many. I got scars on my hands from where that cast iron door singed my hand. It was so hot. You know, it would get very, very hot. But it had to be very hot because those flue gases had to be very, very hot to heat the slate that would stay warm overnight. So that even though the fire had died down, the bricks, the slate would be warm enough to keep the greenhouse warm for the rest of that thing. So what we were talking about, remind me again.
Different seasons.
Seasons. So that was one of the things we did, was you'd have a greenhouse season, let's say from February, March into April, a greenhouse season where you were very busy in the greenhouse raising your plants that you were going to transplant out into the farm in the spring. And then, you know, usually late April, May, you'd be planting lettuce, different kinds of crops out in the spring. Farmers in those days, you don't see too much of it anymore.